What really holds up the most powerful currency on Earth? You've probably heard it's all about economic strength, global trade, or military might. But that's only half the story. The other half is much, much dirtier. What if I told you the US dollar's dominance is quietly propped up by a multi-trillion-dollar shadow economy? That every single day, a river of dirty money from drug cartels, cybercriminals, and black market empires flows through the global financial system, and in doing so, creates a massive hidden demand for the dollar. This isn't some back-alley conspiracy theory. It's one of the biggest open secrets in modern finance. Because behind every clean transaction lies a dirty one. And the truth is, the dollar doesn't just rule the world because it's trusted. It rules because it's useful, even to criminals. Sit tight. Today, we're exposing how the same illegal economy world leaders publicly condemn might be the one they privately need to maintain their power, and how this hidden alliance affects every one of us. Welcome to Empire Secrets. To understand this dirty secret, you first have to understand the official story. For decades, the US dollar has been the undisputed king of global finance. It's the world's primary reserve currency. Central banks from Beijing to Berlin are sitting on huge piles of it. When countries trade, whether it's for oil, phones, or food, the deal is almost always priced in dollars. In fact, the dollar is involved in about 88% of all global foreign exchange transactions. This creates a constant, massive global demand for American currency. This system gives the United States what's often called an exorbitant privilege. Think of the global financial system as a massive plumbing network that connects every country on Earth. America's privilege is that it controls the main water valve. It can borrow money more cheaply than other nations and buy goods in its own currency without worrying about exchange rates, letting the water flow easily its way. Most importantly, it can weaponize this control. Through sanctions, the US can effectively turn off a nation's tap, cutting them off from the international marketplace. It's a threat that keeps allies in line and puts adversaries in a corner. When Washington froze billions in Russia reserves back in 2022, it sent a shockwave across the globe. The message was crystal clear. If you want access to the global water supply, you play by America's rules. This power is global. Any international bank that wants to deal in dollars has to follow US anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing laws. The story we're told is that this power rests on the solid foundation of the US economy, deep financial markets, and the full might of its military. But if you scratch just below the surface of this clean, regulated system, you find a second shadow engine. One that runs on dirty money. And here's the twist. This dirty money in the world might be what keeps your rent affordable. Now, the clean official story sounds reassuring. But the reality is that the global financial system has a dark twin, a shadow economy of illicit trade valued at up to $2.2 trillion a year, and the currency of choice for this shadow world, almost always the US dollar. This isn't some fringe activity. A staggering 83% of the world's population lives in countries with high levels of crime. And from Mexican cartels to cyber syndicates in Asia, the dollar is the universal language of crime. It's stable, it's trusted, and it's accepted everywhere. That makes it the perfect vehicle for washing dirty cash. And here's where the story gets uncomfortable. The US financial system itself has been one of the biggest laundromats. Let's start with the classic pillar of this world, drug trafficking. Global drug trafficking generates hundreds of billions of dollars in cash every year. You can't just deposit that into a checking account. The cash is a logistical nightmare that has to be cleaned or laundered to hide where it came from. This laundering process is a massive worldwide industry, and the US financial system has been a critical hub for it. Remember the infamous case of Wachovia Bank. Back in 2010, the bank was caught having laundered over $380 billion for Mexican drug cartels. The cartels smuggled cash across the border, deposited it in Mexican banks with looser rules, and then wired it through Wachovia. The bank basically gave them a free pass, failing to do the basic anti-laundering checks required by law. This wasn't a small slip-up. It was a systemic breakdown that funneled hundreds of billions in drug money straight into the legitimate financial system. And it wasn't just Wachovia. In 2012, HSBC was hit with a record $1.9 billion fine for similar failures, allowing cartels to move hundreds of millions through its accounts. These aren't some backwater banks. They were pillars of the global financial system. The United Nations estimates that between $800 billion and $2 trillion is laundered globally every year. And while only a tiny fraction is ever caught, the vast majority of it flows through transactions denominated in US dollars. This creates a perverse, unspoken dependency. An illegal world generating a constant, powerful demand for US currency that operates completely outside of legitimate trade. It's like a building's foundation. The official economy is the skyscraper you can see, but this shadow economy is a massive, hidden concrete slab beneath it, providing a deep layer of stability. In other words, while governments publicly wage war on financial crime, the system they oversee quietly benefits from the massive liquidity that crime provides. So how exactly does this all work? How does cash from a street corner drug deal end up reinforcing the power of the US dollar? It happens through a shadow financial infrastructure, and it's best understood as a magic trick of turning dirty water clean. First is placement. This is the riskiest part, getting physical cash into the system. It's like dumping barrels of toxic sludge directly into a clean river. This can be done by breaking up huge sums into tiny deposits across many accounts, a technique called smurfing, or by using front businesses that handle lots of cash, like car washes or restaurants, to mix the dirty water with the clean. Next up is layering. This is where the real trick happens. The money is fired through a dizzying web of transactions. It's like the river branching into 1,000 tiny untraceable streams, flowing through a confusing swamp of shell companies and offshore bank accounts. The goal is to create a trail so convoluted that investigators get lost in the maze. Finally, there's integration. The now clean water flows out of the swamp and into the clear, open lake of the legitimate economy. The money is used to buy a skyscraper in New York, a mansion in London, or invest in the stock market. At this point, the money is clean, looking like the profit of some foreign investment fund, and it's now indistinguishable from any other dollar in the system. And once those dollars re-enter legitimate markets, something extraordinary happens. They don't just disappear. They strengthen the very currency they corrupted. It's not just old-school crime anymore. Cybercrime is booming, and ransomware gangs almost always demand payment in cryptocurrency. But their favorites are stablecoins, digital tokens pegged to the US dollar. These stablecoins are like a high-speed bridge. They let criminals use the anonymous vehicle of crypto to race away from the scene of the crime. But the bridge leads them to the safe, trusted neighborhood of the US dollar. Then there are physical black markets. In a place like Nigeria, with a shaky economy, the demand for dollars is so intense that an entire parallel market exists for it. Think of it as a private highway for dollars that bypasses the congested, slow-moving streets of the official currency exchange. In regions of this kind, pockets of immense dollar demand emerge, further deepening the greenback's global footprint. The underlying dynamics form a powerful, self-feeding loop. Trillions of illicit dollars are constantly circulating through the network, fueling liquidity and demand that helps stabilize the entire structure. It's the invisible scaffolding holding up the official financial world. And all leads us to the central paradox. If this illicit economy is so huge and destructive, why hasn't it been stopped? The complicated answer is that the US is in a constant battle with these networks, but it also benefits from the system they feed. Despite record-high enforcement budgets, the US Justice Department estimates that less than 1% of global dirty money is ever seized. The key is the weaponization of the dollar, because the dollar is the heart of both legal and illegal finance. US regulators have unparalleled global reach. If a bank in Europe wants to use dollars, it must play by US rules. This lets the Treasury Department act as the world's financial cop, slapping massive fines on banks that don't comply. And that's a serious weapon. But here's the thing, this power only exists because the dollar is dominant. and that dominance is partially fueled by the endless demand from this underground network. In a bizarre feedback loop, the very criminality the US fights gives it the power to fight that criminality. It's a snake eating its own tail. The dynamic it also extends to legal tools. In fiscal year 2024, the US collected about $77 billion in tariff revenue. While there has been a surge in collections in fiscal year 2025, those tariffs are taxes on imported goods. And since international trade is overwhelmingly done in dollars, they act as another level to reinforce dollar demand. Tariffs have also been used as a political threat, especially against nations in the BRICS bloc that are trying to reduce their reliance on the dollar. This creates a fragile and dangerous balance. The US relationship with the shadow economy is like a forest ranger who has to fight wildfires, but also secretly owns the company that supplies the water. The financial system condemns the crime but quietly accepts the cash, because that cash is a pillar of its stability. The illegal economy isn't just a parasite on the global system. In some ways, it has become a symbiotic partner. So, what does this all mean? We have a global financial architecture that, on the surface, runs on free trade, economic strength, and the rule of law. But underneath, it's being propped up by a hidden world of crime that generates trillions in demand for the US dollar. Drug money, cybercrime, and black markets aren't just bugs in the system. They've become a feature. They're not just cracks in the wall, they are part of the concrete in the building's very foundation. This is the dirty secret. The dollar's power is tangled up with the very criminal underworld it's supposed to be fighting. It's a deep hypocrisy at the heart of modern finance. Leaders can announce crackdowns and sanctions, but they're fighting a fire with gasoline. The more they use the dollar's power to enforce rules, the more they reinforce its central role, which is what makes it so attractive to criminals in the first place. This financial order is now facing real challenges. Competitors like China and Russia are actively building alternative payment methods to get around the dollar. The BRICS nations are developing platforms like BRICS Pay to trade in their own currencies, but they face a monumental task. The dollar's power isn't just policy, it's baked into the infrastructure of both the legal and illegal global economies. For now, the dollar remains king, mostly because there's no other currency that offers the same scale, liquidity, and trust. But its position is more fragile than it looks. A system that partially relies on a foundation of criminality is a system built on a contradiction. And the real question is, how long can you police the world with a currency that doubles as the lifeblood of global crime? Because in the end, the dollar's greatest strength might also be its greatest flaw. It rules both the courtroom and the underworld. The global economy is a complex machine with visible gears and hidden levers. If you want to keep exploring what's really going on behind the headlines, make sure you're subscribed with the notifications on. What do you think is the biggest threat to the dollar's dominance? The rise of BRICS, the growth of cryptocurrency, or the internal contradictions of the system itself? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. This was Empire Secrets. Your desire, your empire.